Welcome to the That's Good Sports podcast here on the That's Good Broncos YouTube channel and Podbean, and we're on iTunes now. We're everywhere. We're like a real podcast. I am Brandon Perna, joined by the one and maybe only
Will Keys. What's up?
Will Keys. Yeah, so like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can download this through Podbean and go to iTunes. I'm going to ask you right now, if you go to iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating. Right into iTunes. Say you want to give us 6 stars, but they only allow 5. And leave a review, because doing those things is how fucking iTunes works. It's like views on YouTube. The more ratings you get, the better this pod will show up in their search engine. And if you want Will and I to have a future outside of these 2 tiny rooms we're in right now, a rating would help quite a bit. And today we've got a lot to talk about. But full disclosure, this is the second fucking time we're doing this thing.
If we sound a little
tired,
a little off, a little tired, a little exhausted, just know that we did a full dress rehearsal that lasted about an hour and a half.
Hour and a half recording. Yeah. We went long, and then the software on my computer did not save correctly. We had a technical issue, and I thought I fixed it. And then I'll take the blame. I'll take the heat here. Didn't fucking fix it. So we're doing this for the second time. Today on the docket, the pod docket, we're going to talk about Broncos shit. This is how the podcast works. We do half of it's on the Broncos, half of it's on the NFL. So the first half will be about the Broncos, talking about the new stadium name, Bradley Chubb's contract, Case Keenum a little bit, and then NFL, we're talking a little bit about free agency, which teams, which players who are traded or signed with new teams we think will have good fantasy value this year or increased fantasy value, and which guys might have shitty value, whose value dropped, and a couple of the free agents who haven't signed, and will tell you who Dez Bryant will actually sign with. So things are a little slow, but we do have a lot to talk about. Before we actually start with the Broncos, I just saw this on Twitter, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Baker Mayfield was on Colin Cowherd's show, which I'm not a fan of Colin Cowherd. To me, he's like the slick, more handsome Skip Bayless. He's Slick Bayless. And he had he brought up some clip with Baker Mayfield where he ran towards the sideline or something to celebrate after a touchdown, and he was trying to insinuate that Baker Mayfield's not a great teammate because he didn't celebrate with his teammates right after the touchdown. Some really arbitrary, stupid bullshit, and Baker Mayfield called him out on it. And I just wanted to see what you thought about Mayfield and how much you hate Colin Cowherd. Or maybe you love him. Maybe you respect the fact that he brings up these dumb things and people are going to talk about it.
I mean, I actually kind of respect the fact that he did it with Baker in studio. I think that's kind of ballsy, honestly. It's dumb and it doesn't make his take any more correct, but at least you say it to their face, because most of these guys will just I'm sure he's done the same exact thing with Baker Mayfield while he's not there, but I respect having him in on the show and
So you're saying
straight to him.
Right. So you're saying basically it makes Cowherd's balls bigger, but his brain a little smaller.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there.
I think it was the Cowherd take. Watch out, Colin. I'm coming for your stupid ass chair.
Yeah, I mean, this show will be more popular than anything on FS1. Give us another month and we'll be fine.
1 month.
Yeah, it was such a stupid example. He throws a really pretty awesome touchdown pass against Ohio State, and his teammates are celebrating on the far side of the end zone where the guy scored. And then Mayfield kind of runs off towards the student section in the band, and apparently Cowherd thinks that because he didn't go and celebrate with his teammates, he's not a team guy, which is You know, I think 5 seconds out of like Baker Mayfield played in college for like 5 years.
Yeah.
You need to pull 5 seconds out of a 5-year college career and say, this is why you're not a team guy.
Yeah. And that's
pretty ridiculous.
That's basically what Mayfield said. It's if you just search Colin Cowherd on Twitter right now or today and Baker Mayfield, watch the clip. It's entertaining. It makes me respect Baker Mayfield a little more. I like Baker Mayfield. I honestly feel like if I had more confidence, because I obviously have the skill set and maybe just a bigger physical build, I would have been a very similar quarterback to Baker Mayfield, both on and off the field. The confidence there is key because if you're going to be a quarterback, you need confidence. And after doing it for 1 year in 8th grade, I said, no, I'll just move me back to running back coach. This is too fucking hard and stressful. So
yeah, I mean, you had the arm, you had the acumen, but
I didn't have the balls. I had the big brain and the tiny balls. It was just not a good combo.
Little je ne sais quoi for quarterbacking.
Yeah. No, and I think, like, if Cowherd was going to pick something, like, if you want to talk about something, take a bad throw. You know what I mean? Take something that actually is applicable. Because at the end, Cowherd's like, well, in the NFL, you have like the windows for decision making. It's smaller. You got to be better at making decisions. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking? How does that?
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything?
It's like, well, then pick a throw where, you know, he has a guy wide open and be like, you're not going to have these throws in the NFL. How do you plan to? Like, ask him something that's, I don't know, maybe nobody would be talking about it though. So that's why.
That's why Cowherd exists. That's how and why he exists.
Ask the stupid things, which if any players want to come on here, I will ask you plenty of stupid shit that people will make fun of me for.
Yeah. Or, I mean, if Baker Mayfield wants to come on the show too, we'll like.
Yeah. Tweet this podcast to Baker Mayfield.
An hour.
Yeah. Tweet it to Baker and see if he'll come on here, and we'll treat him with some fucking respect.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll treat you the way you deserve, not like Colin.
I'll show him better ways to grab his balls on the sideline. That's how I can help him.
Yeah, better form.
Dude, I hope he does it more.
Cut the balls more securely.
A little more gentle with those things, Baker. You want to be a father one day, probably.
Yeah. Take it easy. Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the Broncos news, which starts with outside linebacker Bradley Chubb, who after 1 or 2 practices as his coach or pass rush consultant, as somebody corrected me saying DeMarcus Ware is not a coach, he's a pass rush consultant. It's the same fucking thing. I appreciate the technical acumen though. DeMarcus Ware said Chubb could be the next him. He could be the next me, is what Ware said. What was the news with Chubb today, Will?
Well, funny you ask. He signed a 4-year, $27 million with $17.9 million as a signing bonus with the Broncos today. Here's his rookie deal.
Yeah, this is his rookie deal. Here's the real question. Did you already think Bradley Chubb had signed his contract?
Yeah.
Because I definitely did too.
It's like, it hasn't mattered since the new CBA, basically. Yeah. When, like back when it mattered, like first-round picks were a lot more important. Back when, like, hypothetically, if you're going to take like a 300-pound quarterback out of LSU and pay him like $80 million to be the face of your franchise, the very wide face of your franchise, you can't miss on those things because you've got so much money tied up in them. But now, like, it's pretty much set. Like, obviously, the 5th player taken in the draft is going to, be a lot more valuable, both on the field and monetarily than someone late in the first round. So it's not to say that like these things are just like mulligans if you get them wrong, but it's not quite as important as it used to be, and that's probably a good thing. Yeah, and contracts, like there's never any rookie like holdouts because there's a scale now. So everybody kind of knows a ballpark of what they're going to get. And you don't have guys who sign before the draft even happens, like Reggie Bush and Mario Williams signing, days before the draft to their giant contracts. So I already assumed Chubb had signed his deal. It was news to me that he signed it today, but we got numbers. So he's getting $27 million over 4 years, 17.9 in signing bonuses, which to me is a nice chunk of fucking change to get all at once.
And I hope he considers donating to my Patreon account.
Just, nothing big. 10,000 a week, maybe.
40 grand a month. Bradley would be very kind of you. And really, if Bradley Chubb donates $40,000 a month to my YouTube channel, I'll basically be his personal propaganda machine. Whatever he wants me to say about him and the team and the coaches, I'm not going to question it. I will be his mouthpiece. I will be his Mike Kliss to the Broncos for far less money. So think about that, Bradley.
So you know how they always ask rookies what's the first thing that you're going to buy once you sign your deal? If you made basically $17.9 million today, Brandon, what would you go out and buy?
Well, if I was Bradley Chubb, I'd say the first thing I'm going to buy is Brandon Perna, and I'm going to get him for a hell of a deal. If I had $17.9 million today, what would I go out and buy?
Yeah.
Honestly, my wife needs a new car, so I would get her a car.
Yeah. Okay.
I would get her a car.
Like a used Subaru or something nice?
No, she wants a Mini Cooper Countryman.
Interesting. You think you can afford that? With $17.9 million in the bank?
With $17.9 million, we can. Can't afford a new one right now.
That's why you have to hit that like and subscribe and rate the podcast.
That's right. I would buy her the 2019 model. The 2019 with everything in it. And then I would buy what else? And probably a cabin in the mountains to get away. I'd buy a cabin in the mountains and have a high-speed internet tower installed.
A tower?
It looks like one of those trees, so it blends in right next to my cabin, so I could just work the entire summer up in the mountains and have internet access. That's what I would do.
I think I'd literally want my tower to be built out of ivory.
An ivory cell tower, internet out. Smart.
Yeah, well...
Will Keys murders 1,000 elephants to get good signal in the mountains.
I would actually give my money to charity, so...
Oh, fuck you.
Just kidding. You
set me up for that, didn't you?
Sure did. Okay,
Wait.
Okay.
What charity would you give to? What's a cause that would be important to you? That's a serious question. Yeah.
I think you'd have to give it to a children's hospital, right?
That's great. You can't go wrong with that. Move. I would go to Alzheimer's research and funding.
Also a good one. Yeah.
So just so everybody knows, we do have hearts here.
Yeah.
We do have big hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'd say so.
Now let's...
We still have the money.
Yeah.
But let's move on. So Pro Football Reference tweeted out a stat that I thought was pretty interesting. So they were tweeting out the highest rated passers in the last 2 minutes of halves. So basically the best quarterbacks in 2-minute drills. So number 1 was Tom Brady. Number 2.
Bullshit. I already don't like this list.
Yeah. Number 2, you're not going to like it anymore. Mike Glennon.
Oh. Yeah, that really discredits the whole fucking list. I know.
Yeah, well, he played 3 games. He must have been really good in 1 2-minute drill. No,
that's I'm trying to find the fucking stat right now so I can confirm that you're not lying to me.
I would never lie to you.
Yeah, you're right. It's Mike Glennon. My brain didn't even fucking register that.
So you see Mike Glennon, and you're like, that's a mistake.
With
couldn't be
117 right. Passer rating in the final couple minutes of halftime and the end of the game.
That's true. Everybody knows Mike Glennon's the next coming of Roger Staubach when it comes to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and the reason this is interesting is because Case Keenum's number 3, and now that I see Mike Glennon number 2, I'm not as excited about this stat.
Yeah, I mean, if you take this the small sample size into account, we can bump Glennon out of there and put
I think
Keenum 2.
This is a mark on Pro Football Reference who I think should have whittled this down to quarterbacks who played at least 50% of the snaps in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it would be Brady, Keenum, Russ Wilson, Drew Brees. And then Joe Flacco, your top 5.
Also, if you're taking the playoffs into account, I think Keenum probably jumps Brady because just saying, like, Keenum threw a touchdown pass in the last play of the game. That goes to his quarterback rating. That bumps it.
Yeah,
Brady,
I wonder if,
on the other hand, fumbled.
I wonder if this is regular season or if it includes postseason.
I think it's just regular season.
I think you're right, because if it's postseason, I would imagine that Nick Foles would be on this list somewhere up high. But I mean,
himself.
For Broncos fans, this is cool because it basically means Case Keenum is a clutch passer in the final minutes of the game when you need him to be the most. I think it'd be interesting to see John Elway's career, to see what this stat is for him. I think Broncos fans would argue he was probably the best ever, but I would like to see the numbers behind that. And he's ahead of Wilson, Brees, Flacco, Wentz, Alex Smith, Josh McCown, Cam Newton, Trevor Siemian, Ben Roethlisberger, Dak Prescott. So 2 outliers on this list, probably Mike Glennon and Trevor Siemian.
Tom Brady. Oh, yeah. Oh, Trevor Siemian.
And so we can safely say Case Keenum definitely will be better than Trevor Siemian in 2018, but maybe not as good as Mike Glennon.
Mike Glennon's in Arizona now?
I don't know. Is it Glennon, so. Bradford, and Rosen?
Yeah, that's a group of nerds right there. That's if I've ever seen one.
That really is.
Yeah.
They win for the most nerdy quarterback combo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Arizona Cardinals. Confirmed.
So I think this just proves that Case Keenum really took advantage of his first good situation in the NFL, because you remember he was drafted by the Texans, or he wasn't drafted, he was signed by the Texans as a rookie.
Right. He was a free agent.
And that was the year that they went 2-14, and Gary Kubiak, the team was so bad that Gary Kubiak literally collapsed on the sideline. And
they were so bad they almost fucking killed Gary Kubiak.
Which the 2016 Broncos tried to do too. Paxton Lynch was so bad in that Falcons game. He almost killed me, Paxton.
The Gary Kubiak's kryptonite is just bad football.
Yeah, it's as long as he's got a playoff team, he'll live forever.
Sadly, though, as a coach, I mean, obviously there's the 2015 Super Bowl season's your outlier, but sadly as a coach, he was basically fueled just by average football most of his
Yeah. If you can get him, if you can get him and Jeff Fisher to team up and create an 8-8 super team that is just perfectly average every year, I swear to God, he'll live to 200.
You have figured out how Gary Kubiak can escape Father Time.
It is the fountain of youth for Mr. Kubiak.
Problem is Jeff Fisher lives with him, so
yeah, it might
is that a world you want to live in with the 150-year-old Fisher and Kubiak? I don't know. I don't hate Jeff Fisher, but I don't know if I want to live in that world.
I'd hate to see what that mustache looks like after he crosses the century mark.
I don't think the mustache will age because of it.
Everything else is gone gray and white.
Oh, withered and
mustaches. Yeah, he's still wearing 3XL sized long sleeve T-shirts on the sideline. Can't find his challenge flag.
If you just saw his mustache and nothing else, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between him and Tom Selleck.
Yeah, but then you zoom out and it's just this withered old man. It looks like Kirk Douglas at age 100. Yeah, but I guess the bigger point is that, Case Keenum, when given the pieces,
right,
is good. And he's only been given the pieces and the coaching around him once in his career.
1.5 times, really good. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, essentially. And now, I don't think that Denver's situation is as good as Minnesota was last year, obviously. But it's better, I think. I think you'd probably agree that it's better than Los Angeles was, and it's definitely better than Houston was at the start of his career.
Yeah, I think it – and honestly, I think at least on the offensive side of the ball, it has the potential to be just as good as Minnesota's was. And depending on how some of the rookies play, it could be a little bit better. I think there might be more depth for him in terms of receiving targets. Mm-hmm. And Jake Butt, that's a huge question mark. But if he's close to what Kyle Rudolph was, then Keenum's going to be in a really good position. I think a lot depends on the offensive line. We know Keenum can play well under pressure. He did it a lot in Minnesota. He was a sack escape artist. But if the offensive line does turn out to be better for whatever reason, and I don't believe it necessarily will, but if he plays behind a good offensive line, I think he's the kind of quarterback who can throw easily for over 30 touchdowns, in a season. And the running game should be decent as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch Case Keenum play, and I'm excited by the fact that he plays well under pressure, and then we get this stat that shows he plays well under pressure when the game is on the line. I think for a quarterback, you can't ask for a lot more, and as long as he continues to not throw interceptions, I think it'll be a good season.
Yeah, I mean, he's like one of those guys who – will let the ball sail on him from time to time, and you kind of saw that come back to bite him in the NFC Championship game. But I think if you can limit those types of plays and then kind of learn to live with them to some extent, you've got yourself a really good quarterback, especially for $18 million a year. And I don't think, how much is Kirk Cousins making, close to 30 this year?
Yeah, it's 29 or some shit.
I don't think the play is going to justify the extra $11 million.
No, I wanted Kirk Cousins too, but the more I learn about Case Keenum and the more the financials played into it, I'm actually happy the Broncos have him. Right now, if you had to ask me, I'd put my money on Case Keenum. And that's not to say that I don't think Cousins will do well in Minnesota, but I just like I like Keenum's style of play better. Even if he ends up being not quite as good as Kirk Cousins, I just like the way he plays the game better than Kirk Cousins. A little more fun, a little more scary, a little more exciting.
Little edge on the edge of your seat. That's what I was going for.
It puts a little fear into you, and it's like good sex. If you're not scared a little bit while you're having it, then it's not worth having.
A wise man once said it, so.
It was me.
Going on to other things that you've said previously.
Uh-oh.
Yikes. No. So you did a video series on the AFC West recently. Check it out on YouTube. That's Good Sports or That's Good Broncos.
Yes.
You basically broke down Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, and then finally the Broncos. And you decided whether or not they would be better or worse in 2018 than they were in 2017. So after all of that, how do you think the AFC West is going to shake out this season from top to bottom?
Right. And I did as much work on this subject as you can, Will. I mean,
basically a dissertation.
Basically, the NFL Network calls me for info on the AFC West now, is how this is happening. But I am predicting, based on paper, based on the offseason moves, free agency, the draft, and like I said in the videos, injuries, a lot of shit can happen just in preseason that will make this list completely irrelevant and completely wrong. But right now, I think the Chargers finish first, then the Broncos, then the Chiefs, and then you can't even see the Raiders because they are dead fucking last in the division. The Raiders, I don't trust John Gruden yet. They have big needs on defense that I don't think they really addressed. They did address areas of strength in the offensive line, and they focused on the defensive line. And if they have success, it's because those units will be really good. But I don't know if I trust that. And I am even less a fan of Raiders fans now because they talk
this long?
So much shit in that video. I talked a lot of shit about the Raiders. I warned them that I was going to talk shit. And then they're acting like they haven't been the shittiest team in the division for the last decade and a half. They've had one winning season since, I don't know.
The Super Bowl.
2002, yeah. They were one game better than the Broncos last year. And so I think their fans are a little bit delusional, which makes me...
you think?
It reignited my hate for the Raiders. I'll say that. The Chargers, I just like their defense too much. I think they got even better by adding the safety Derwin James in the draft to a secondary that I think will compete to be a top 3 secondary in the league this year. And it's a blueprint from the Broncos' 2015 Super Bowl run. You got the 2 elite edge rushers, Bosa, Ingram, solid defensive line, and then a tremendous secondary, a veteran quarterback who has the offensive tools around him, I think, and he had a great season last year. He eliminated a lot of the interceptions. So I think overall as a team, they're the best unit. Hopefully Caleb Sturgis is a good kicker and doesn't cost them games early in the season. Like what we talked about, it boils down to whether or not the Chargers start the season well. Last year they lost the first 4 games and really fucked them at the end of the season. As long as they don't do that again, I'm confident they'll be the team to beat in the AFC West. And the Chiefs are too much of a question mark, I think, with first-year starter Patrick Mahomes. So that's kind of what I based it on. How do you see the AFC West shaking out?
So I saw the Chiefs at the top. I think they're going to lose a little bit with shaking your head from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, but I think they're also going to get a little bit more dynamic on offense in some senses. I think you have to cover the whole field basically with Patrick Mahomes. You really have to worry about him extending the play like we saw in that one game that he played last year against the Broncos. Like the play's really not over until he's on the ground.
Yeah, and he was also playing against the scrub defense, so don't forget.
Yeah, we'll take that into account as well. I think the Chargers will be second place. They've been basically picked by everyone to win the AFC West, go 16-0 this year, win the Super Bowl by at least 45 points. But I just don't trust the Chargers, and I haven't for 10 years, and I'm not going to until they give me reason to, because they're just such a weird team. And they just find a way to screw things up more often than not. I have a question for you, and this is a quick yes or no. Phillip Rivers, Hall of Famer or not?
No, not yet.
I don't think so either.
If he gets a Super Bowl win, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be really hard to argue with that.
And to me, Rivers, I've seen Rivers do amazing things, and I've also seen him with games on the line just fucking tank the team with bad throws and interceptions. That's kind of been I feel like his MO is in the fourth quarter, you don't know if he's going to be really good or really shitty. And I've seen both, and I've seen it enough times where he's close, but I would say no. He wins a Super Bowl, you might be in the conversation.
I feel like he's basically the AFC's version of Tony Romo, except probably made the playoffs a little less often, I think. I'd have to check that. But he didn't get as much crap as Romo did his whole career for some of the mistakes he made late in games. And I don't know. I think that probably has to do with San Diego is a lot more lax of a market, obviously, than Dallas, and there's a lot less scrutiny on the Chargers than there were, especially on those Romo Cowboy teams. But, that kind of just goes to show, how much the media and, what teams are on prime time every week does for our perception. Because I bet if you looked at, Romo and Rivers' numbers respectively, and their, to go back to that Pro Football Reference stat, I bet their passer ratings late in games are fairly comparable, and yet we think of the two guys sort of differently.
Yeah. To me, I think the most impressive thing Phillip Rivers ever did was play in that playoff game with the torn ACL, or getting the ACL surgery and playing it in a week, whatever the fuck he did. I think he played on a torn ACL, right?
I believe so. Which, to be fair, he doesn't really move in football games. Kind of just takes a nap. Yeah, no, it's good. And I still I hold it against him though. He should have won 2 Super Bowls with the talent he had on those mid 2000s teams.
No, those teams are stacked.
His offense was Gates, Vincent Jackson on the outside. He he had LaDainian Tomlinson, Michael Turner, and Darren Sproles all in the same backfield.
Yeah.
And Lorenzo Neal, who's like one of the best fullbacks to ever do it.
Well, when you get to the playoffs, you need really good defense to help you there. I don't know what the Chargers' defense was those years.
They had like Sean Merriman.
Yeah, they had one. They had Sean Merriman.
Quite jammer.
And Eric Weddle, maybe.
Eric Weddle, yeah.
You had Marty Ball. Little Marty Ball, then Norv Turner Ball. I don't know. Maybe better head coach will get you to the Super Bowl. I don't think it's all on Rivers, but he definitely those teams had the firepower to get to the Super Bowl, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And it falls on the quarterback a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, with your Patrick Mahomes theory about him spreading the ball down the field a little more. Just a reminder, Alex Smith had the best adjusted completion percentage for deep. He was the most accurate deep ball passer in 2017. 131.4 passer rating on deep balls. 1,344 yards on deep pass plays. Number one.
Well, guess what? Stats are for nerds, so...
We'll see if Mahomes does better than that.
We will. But let's move on because we've got a pretty interesting topic to talk about here to finish off the Broncos half of this podcast.
Cool.
That's the new news that the Broncos have temporarily gotten rid of the Sports Authority Field name at Mile High. It's now Broncos Stadium at Mile High for at least this year until they find a new corporate sponsor to name their stadium.
A creativity rating, Broncos Field at Mile High. What do you give the Broncos for coming up with that one?
It's like a 2.5 out of 10, maybe.
Do you think they should have just called it Mile High Stadium for their temporary?
Yeah, they should have. But the problem with that is like people would get really upset when they eventually sold the rights again, and it wasn't Mile High Stadium anymore.
But don't you think people understand that they're going to sell the naming rights, or do you think fans really don't have a clue how that shit works?
I think most do, but a lot don't.
Okay.
Or we'll just get angry anyway. Just be like, we should be different. We should.
Right.
We should just forego the millions and millions of dollars that we could make in advertising revenue.
Right.
And call it Mile High Stadium.
That money goes to paying people like because coaches aren't part of the salary cap, correct?
Right.
So John Elway is not part of the salary cap. So the money, extra money they make from shit like that goes partially to paying good coaches, good executives, and those sort of things. So I feel like the people who would say like they don't need to make all that extra money are the same people who would complain if they didn't use the money to, say when Elway's gone and there's like a really great GM available and they don't want to pay him, they would complain about that, or head coach or whatever. So you need the money coming in from stadium rights. Yeah,
like everybody understands, like on the player side, it is a business, but from the top level down, it is also a business. Like it functions how a normal business does. Like there's not just like this big pool of money that every owner gets to use that like the whole NFL shares. Like each franchise has to make its own money.
Well, there is a big pool of money that does go back to the team though too.
Well, yeah, no,
from
of course,
the TV deals and shit like that.
Yeah, but it's not like
but that goes to operating costs. Like
yes,
the operating costs of a stadium, like of a team, are insanely high. I looked that stuff up a few months ago and for the Broncos, and I was surprised at how much money it costs to actually run everything.
Oh, yeah. It's absurd.
And I guess maybe one thing fans would be upset about is I believe taxpayer dollars paid for the majority of Invesco Field, Sports Authority, Mile High Stadium. So fans kind of paid for that shit anyway. So I think a lot of people might feel like we should get to call it whatever the fuck we want, which is fair. Fair.
No, that's a fair argument. But so if we did get to call it whatever the fuck we wanted to, and we got to name it temporarily for this year, what are some of the names that you would come up with, Brandon?
Just to match, my channel, I would go with Big Dick Player Field, Big Dick Bowling Field, fuck you, Tom Brady Center for football at Mile High. Some people have suggested that's good Broncos Stadium. I think that's a little pretentious. If I were to suggest that.
Wait until we get a little bit bigger.
Exactly. Once people look at this like, shitty ESPN, then I'll think about that. I like Big Dick Player Field, though. I think it sends a message right away to opposing teams, to the rest of the fucking country. Like, we're not messing around here. We're swinging some big dicks on this field. And it might not have anything to do with football today.
Yeah, I'd love that, because we were talking about last week how Denver's in the running to get a World Cup game in 2026.
Right.
I'd love to see just, a bunch of, people who, barely speak English coming for a World Cup game and, all right, we are headed to Big Dick Player Field at Mile High. Can you punch that into Google Maps?
Right, to Argentina and Iceland. Yeah. We'll be playing at Big Dick Field at Mile High.
Yeah.
See, that would be cool.
I think it'd be worth the price of admission, personally.
Right, so give me some of yours.
Yeah, I had a few ideas. So one I actually took from a guy on Reddit, on the Broncos Reddit. One Hoop on the Broncos subreddit suggested that they call it "Put Bolin in the Hall of Fame Field," which I think is a perfect idea because A, you're getting the message out there that he needs to be in the Hall of Fame, and B, it works temporarily because once he's in the Hall of Fame, then you can sell the naming rights and make money. I think that's the best of both worlds.
I think that's smart.
Yeah. Other than that, I had a few other ideas. So, all right, Brandon, when you think of war movies, what comes to mind? Like Saving Private Ryan, Full Metal Jacket.
Wall-E.
Wall-E, everybody knows, is a great war movie. You might think of some John Wayne movies, maybe All Quiet on the Western Front.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, a great war movie. Yeah, well,
The Notebook.
That's enough. For me, Red Dawn from 1984. Takes place in Colorado.
Colorado war movie.
Yep, some high schoolers, namely Patrick Swayze, C. Thomas Howell, Charlie Sheen, expelled the Red Menace from rural Colorado and took out the Soviet Empire, basically, on their own home turf.
If we can tie Patrick Swayze into the name, I'm all for it.
Right. So in honor of them, we name it Wolverine Stadium because they're the Wolverines in the movie. Pay a little tribute to our fallen heroes. And it's got a Colorado tie-in. I think it's a fierce sounding name.
Right. And I think it would attract a lot of comic book nerds too.
I agree.
Mistakenly going to the stadium thinking it's an extra Comic-Con, and it's like, oh shit, this is a football game? Why are we at Wolverine Stadium?
We're here to see some sports ball? Get me out of here. So my last idea, and this is a little high concept, so try to stick with me here. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to call it Insert Rookie Stadium. So basically what you do is every year you take either a late round pick or an undrafted rookie. Let's say for this year, David Williams, who is their last pick out of Arkansas. It's David Williams Stadium at Mile High. So Ideally he rises to the pressure, meets the challenge, becomes an automatic Pro Bowler, and basically one of the best players in the NFL right off the bat, just because he can meet the challenge of having a stadium named after him, because it's a lot of pressure. You're going to get some guys chirping at you. But also if it doesn't matter and he just wilts under the pressure and is out of the league and is in the CFL by this time next year, who cares? It was just a 6th-round pick, they're kind of expendable. So I think you just keep cycling them, pick a new rookie every year, put him on the stadium. You either get them to
I think
meet the expectations, or
it's a bold tactic that has to be considered. It has to be considered at this point.
Yeah.
The motivation alone could drive them to be legends. And if they can't handle that pressure, then they can't play in the NFL, and you'll know right away.
Agreed.
Very smart.
Yeah. Also,
that. I really
teams,
like where your head's at.
Teams coming and they see Philip Lindsay Stadium at Mile High. We have to game plan for this guy. Clearly.
You've really thought about this, haven't you?
Yes. No, Put in the work. Thank you. Yeah, it's like
Dylan Lindsey would work too. Colorado kid.
It's true. Like, he's already played at the stadium. He's got a history. But, yeah, the Raiders come in like, oh, this guy must be the real deal. They've already named the stadium after them because, like, John Gruden doesn't know anybody in the NFL currently right now.
Psych. He's inactive today. You prepared for the wrong guy, Raiders.
Yeah. Royce Freeman goes for 250 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Brilliant.
A little trickery, a little game theory, a little tactics.
Honestly, I think Orange Crush should buy the stadium naming rights.
It's a pretty great idea.
Orange Crush Stadium at Mile High, like, it's literally, there's not a better sponsor name out there for the stadium.
Do they already have, like, a partnership?
I don't know. There's no other like Orange Crush Stadium that I know of.
I mean, like, do they already have a partnership with the Broncos?
No. But Orange Crush is a part of the Pepsi company, I think, or Dr. Pepper or some shit.
Yeah, and you've already got the Pepsi Center.
Yeah, so there should be a tie there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. It just makes too much sense.
Either that or I would like a dildo company to purchase the naming rights.
Do you know any dildo companies?
I'm not going to answer that.
That's what a lawyer might call entrapment.
Exactly. And I've been watching a lot of true crime dramas, and I know exactly what not to say.
Listen, pal, I've been watching a lot of Matlock. The sound was off in the bar, but I think I got the gist of it.
I got what happened.
All right. Any other honorable mentions? Any other ridiculous names?
There's a guy on Twitter at WiseOldAllen, Colorado, CO. He said, how about Peyton does not play here anymore stadium at Mile High? I thought was fair.
I like it.
I personally want to go with something that kind of educates the public at the same time and maybe motivates for a better state here in Colorado. So I thought a good stadium name would be Colorado. We rank 49th in education spending stadium. Better learn sports here, or you'll be as dumb as a kid from Mississippi if you attend public school in the Mile High City Stadium. No offense to Mississippi. But I think they actually
a little bit of offense to Mississippi. I mean, maybe
I think they might rank ahead of Colorado now in terms of education spending.
Yeah, but how are their test scores?
I don't know.
Maybe I didn't
research this.
Colorado just doesn't need to spend as much because everyone's so naturally gifted.
No, I think we're getting dumber here.
That's fair. It might be the weed. Who knows?
That does not make you dumber. That is such a stereotype. It makes me dumber.
It makes you smarter.
Makes some people, though, smarter, function better.
That's fair. I was thinking, like, there's already in lower downtown, you've got Pepsi Center. I think are people going to think like I'm a cop for calling it lower downtown instead of Lodo?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm a cop. So you got the Pepsi Center where the Nuggets and the Avalanche play. You've got Coors Field, obviously, where the Rockies play. Two beverages that are not entirely healthy for you. I think you try to go with a little health slant with the Broncos. Maybe get, the what's the federal position that worries about health? Oh, the Surgeon General on our side gives us a little bit of money. We just call it like H2O Stadium. Get those federal dollars in there. Advertise water.
Interesting. I don't know about that, Will. That was a long setup for something I'm not sure is worth it.
You might be right.
Unless it's like fucking Duffman from The Simpsons saying like H2O, yeah, stadium every time, then don't think it's going to work.
I'm trying to salvage this idea.
Nope. I think if you're going to go healthy, you got to do like Insure Stadium.
How about Pedialyte? Because the Broncos play on Sunday. People always go out and drink on Saturday. They're a little hungover.
It's their hydration.
Reminds them to drink a little Pedialyte.
Maybe. Okay, we're going to move on to the NFL. Will?
Okay.
Really? Oh, wait, real quick. I wanted to say that I saw that Case Keenum passer rating stat in the Broncos Reddit as well, and that came from Chrisman77, except Chris is spelled XHRIS. So that's where I saw it. We wanted to give credit.
Shout out to the Broncos subreddit, who's been very good about promoting all of our stuff.
Oh, yeah. They've been good from the beginning to me.
Yeah. So thanks to those guys.
Okay.
But we're going to move on to the NFL. Yeah.
NFL news. Do. Where is Dez Bryant going, Will?
Funny you asked that, because according to sportsline.com, which is a sports gambling site, the Tennessee Titans are the favorites at -200 to sign wide receiver Dez Bryant. Brandon, do you think that's a good fit or no?
Ooh. Interesting question, Will. But wait, why does a gambling site, like, what info do they have that Dez would go to Tennessee? Do we know that information? Like, what are they basing that on?
That's a very good question.
Has he been talking to them? I don't know. That would be my first real question.
I would imagine that they have sources that the media doesn't even have.
Interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. I think athletically, Dez Bryant would be perfect in Tennessee. Like, they need a wide receiver. That's like been their biggest weakness on offense, is a reliable receiver outside of Delaney Walker. But I started watching All or Nothing.
Yeah.
And prior to the Broncos-Cowboys game, Dez Bryant was like arguing in the wide receivers room with the wide receivers coach for no reason at all. He got mad at the wide receivers coach for the wide receivers coach saying the Broncos defense is good and we need to bring our A game and really prepare if we want to have success against these guys. And he was basically like saying, like, why the fuck do you say that? Why the fuck you got to talk about how good they are? What about us? We're great. It was kind of like the gist of it. And I was just going, oh, shit. No wonder he did not play well last year. It seemed like he wasn't taking the preparation for these games seriously. And then the Cowboys got fucking obliterated by the Broncos. Our defense owned them in that game. Dez Bryant didn't do shit. And
he caused an interception.
Right. Right.
Like
he missed.
Dropped the ball that went into Chris Harris's.
Yeah, that's the one he scooped up. Like, I think Dez Bryant, if he's going to have success, one of two things has to happen. He has to change the way he looks at the game. Like, he has to realize he's getting older, and he's going to have to work harder than he's ever had to work before to stay ahead of defenders and to be better than them. Or he needs to go to a place where there's a really good veteran quarterback where Dez's voice or, any issues he might have is going to be overridden by a strong leader from a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. I think he would be fine like in Green Bay because Rodgers commands that offense and that team. So I think that's what happens, and I don't think Tennessee really has that. I'm not sure Marcus Mariota's the guy would be a good fit with Dez Bryant either. So I would say no to going to Tennessee.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, Marcus Mariota doesn't strike – like, I like him as a quarterback. I don't know if he strikes me as, like, a great downfield passer, though.
Right.
Like, I think they're best off as, like, a West Coast offense, like, utilizing Delaney Walker and then throwing the ball to, Dion Lewis out of the backfield. Maybe take a couple shots, but that's not their go-to kind of philosophy on offense. But I think at least – for an on-the-field fit, I think San Francisco would make a lot of sense just because they still don't really have like a true number one wide receiver. Right. I know Pierre Garçon's there, but I think they could get better on the outside. But I think the same concerns that you said about like Marcus Mariota maybe not being like the type of leader for Dez Bryant, I don't know if that carries over to like Jimmy Garoppolo either because he's actually like we forget like Garoppolo's been in the league since 2014, so he's essentially a veteran at this point, but he's only played like 8 games in his career. So
no, I think
we don't have a lot to go off of.
No, I think skill-wise, Garoppolo will be better than Mariota. I think he might already be a stronger leader too, but I think Dez could work in San Francisco just because Kyle Shanahan's there. Like I think Kyle Shanahan, it's not just that he's the head coach because he's such an offensive-minded coach that he would be a big part of the offense, and I think, he would be able to work within the confines of whatever Dez Bryant's personality is. So yeah, San Francisco might work. But honestly, I would maybe take Terrell Owens over Dez Bryant right now.
Yeah, I mean, T.O., like if you've been keeping up, he ran a 4.43 40 earlier in the week. He hasn't played since he was 37, but
so I think he would come back humble. He would have to be humble.
Yeah, and he's refreshed. Like he hasn't taken a hit in a long time.
Right. How old is T.O. now?
He's 44.
Yeah, I would take T.O. over Dez Bryant today.
Yeah, last year he played in the NFL with the Bengals. He caught like 9 or 10 touchdowns.
Easy.
Had almost 1,000 yards, like 70 catches.
Dude,
it would be a terrible team too.
It would be so cool if a team gave Owens a chance.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
It would be so fucking cool to see. I don't know if it would work. I'm not saying like it's a smart move. I'm saying entertainment wise, I would watch every second of the game, the first game he's back, and many after, until he got hurt.
Oh, yeah, and I legitimately believe – maybe he dies on the field, but I legitimately believe that if you plugged him into the right offense, he could have 500 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Completely capable. It's crazy.
Yeah, back in the day, he was head and shoulders above everybody else athletically on the field. He and Randy Moss were those two kind of guys that come along every so often. And now that he's 44, I think he's just kind of average, which will
he'd be fine.
Get you something,
Pair him with another really good receiver, and he'll have success. Yeah. The crazy thing, him and Randy Moss, completely different body types too.
Yeah,
both were the best, in the game at the position. The question for T.O. for me would be what's he taking right now that he can't be taking if he were playing in the NFL? I'm not saying there is something, but probably a substance that he's taking that he wouldn't be able to take in the NFL.
Might make the Patriots think twice then.
Unidentifiable alien jizz substance in Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
Call back to the last episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, because Dez Bryant, unsigned free agent, and then I noticed there are some pretty good safeties that are still free agents, and I'm just kind of puzzled as to why they haven't landed teams. So you've got Eric Reed, pretty good safety, Trey Boston, very good season with the Chargers last year, and then Kenny Vaccaro, kind of an up-and-down career, couple really good years, couple kind of shitty years, but they haven't signed anywhere. And I think there are teams that could use a second, good safety. So I don't know if any of these guys have injury concerns. I don't think Eric Reed does. I think a big reason he hasn't signed is obviously the anthem protests. And next to Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco, he's been the most vocal about it, which I think is hurt him here. But Trey Boston to me is puzzling. I get why did I say San Diego? Why Los Angeles didn't sign him?
Same thing.
Because they grabbed Derwin James in the draft, so they have their safety position covered. But the Titans, next to Kevin Byard, he's one of the best safeties in the league, and you give him a guy
not according to Deion Sanders, he's not.
Yeah, fucking Deion Sanders is an idiot. If you don't know, Deion Sanders didn't know who Kevin Byard was on Twitter.
Yeah, the guy who led the league in interceptions last year.
Right. So put Eric Reed or Trey Boston with him, two other guys who are pretty good in coverage as safeties, because right now they have Jonathan Cyprien, and they drafted Dane Cruikshank, notably one of the best named players in the draft. Cruikshank. Never fuck with the guy with the last name Cruikshank. But then I went and looked at other teams that I thought could maybe use the help of a safety. You've got the Bengals, the Browns, the Buccaneers, the Giants, the Jets, the Packers, Washington, the Steelers. So why do you think these guys haven't signed anywhere? I think it's just confusing to me because the NFL had these guys ranked really high as some of the best available free agents heading into this like last free agency period?
Yeah. So I think that teams are starting to devalue the safety position as a whole. And I think you can kind of tell just because, like, for the very reason that, like, Derwin James, who, like, seemed before the season like he was a top 5 prospect in the draft, even fell to the Chargers in kind of like the late teens
17
in the draft. Yeah. And also you can look at a guy like Tyrann Mathieu not getting re-signed by the Cardinals and having to basically move on to the Texans at free agency. Like, teams just don't value the safety position anymore. And I don't know if that's a wise strategy, but it seems to be the route that most teams are taking, and they're paying corners.
Yeah.
And it's taken away from safety money.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in the reason why. It's weird. It's like positions, I feel like, get devalued, and it's like cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Like, but right now you can maybe argue safety. Running back was, and maybe kind of still is.
It's starting to make a comeback, but yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's weird. And it's because the NFL, like, offenses are always evolving, and as are the defenses and the schemes. So that probably has something to do with it. But I don't think you can undervalue safeties who are good in coverage. Like, I get, like, why TJ Ward was released. He's getting older, and the area he wasn't really strong in, it was in pass coverage, right? So these guys are like 4th, 5th year safeties. So another reason is they were due to get paid. They're coming out of their rookie contract. So you're probably right. Teams just don't want to pay them, and teams are just going to wait for somebody to get hurt and then probably, sign one of these guys to help their roster. But I think, like, the Broncos safeties last year were not great in coverage, and they have a lot of depth at that position. And they're a team right now who's currently not paying corners because they let Aqib Talib go. They did give Chris Harris a raise, but even he's underpaid, and they're putting Bradley Roby on his, 5th year, and going to try to maybe sign him to a deal. So they took money. The Broncos kind of did the opposite and took money away from their corner position and now have a bunch of safety.
Yeah.
So they're kind of an outlier, but I don't know. If I see a safety that plays well in coverage, I find that to be a huge asset because, traditionally a lot of the safeties are really good against the run, and you find the guy who can line up with tight ends and running backs, and I think it's really valuable. And I think Trey Boston was maybe the best out of this group last year in those situations, and I don't know, maybe there's injury issues you don't know about as well, but I would take Eric Reed or Trey Boston in a second if I needed another safety right now.
Yeah, like Trey Boston was like a serious asset on the Panthers the year they went 15-1 and made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
like,
so it's
a guy you'd assume would have a job and played well, in Los Angeles last year too. It doesn't really make sense, but I think like teams are trying to find guys that are either like center fielder ball hawk types. Like you think about like how the Browns play Jabril Peppers like 50 yards off the line of scrimmage. Like
right.
You want your like serious like last line of defense. And then you want your nickel linebacker type like Dion Buchanan in Arizona, or a guy that the Broncos just traded for in Sua Cravens, who's sort of a safety linebacker hybrid who can ideally cover tight ends. Like everybody just wants like a guy that can cover Rob Gronkowski basically, or like Travis Kelce, especially if you're in the AFC West, which the Broncos are. And it just like the pursuit of finding that guy is very, very difficult. But it's like they've basically engineered a new position just to like deal with those like super hyper athletic tight ends.
Right. And which
to varying levels of success. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would stack my defense with 4 corners and 1 safety. Like that's how I would try to play it. And you find your 4th corner, I'd look for a guy that you don't really know whether he's a safety or a corner. Like he's pretty good in coverage, but not good enough to say a corner, but he's a lot better against the run than a corner. Like that's the guy you want as your guy you can kind of move around in the lineup, because you want a guy who can, like you said, match up with all those tight ends and stop the run if you need to. And I think if you can confuse, like, if you have two guys who do both those things well that you can interchange, it makes your secondary dynamic. It allows you to do a lot of things, but what do we know?
I have a question. If you could pick anybody in the world to cover Rob Gronkowski, to like play as your just Gronkowski stopper on defense, who do you take? Anyone in the world. Anybody? Actually, anyone in history too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. I would take Steve Atwater to fucking cover him.
Was Atwater tall enough?
Yeah, he's like 6'2".
Okay.
Yeah, Atwater's a fucking big dude. Like, if Atwater played now, they might have him like as an outside linebacker.
Probably. Like he.
But Atwater was like a brutal hitter, and he was a good cover safety. So you want a guy with like that size and athleticism to cover him. Anybody in the world, I would maybe take Julio Jones and put him on defense to cover him.
I'm taking one of the Gronkowski brothers.
Oh, smart.
Gets in his head a little bit.
Nobody knows a Gronk like a Gronk.
Exactly. Yeah, they can just like talk shit all the way down the field, make 69 jokes to the point where Gronkowski loses his instincts for the game. He doesn't know which routes to run. He's just off of his game completely, like because Chris keeps. I take back my punching him in the ribs.
I would have LeBron James cover him.
Oh, you know what? I think that might be the move, actually.
2 inches taller.
Yeah.
Probably stronger.
Yeah, definitely strong. Yeah, I mean, roughly the same weight.
He's more athletic than
Gronk. That idea. Absolutely is.
And Gronk's an athletic freak, but LeBron James is
LeJohn. Yeah, I think that's a hard one to beat.
LeBron.
I like that.
Come on, yeah. LeBron, come play defense.
Just a season. Like then go sign with the Lakers or whatever you're gonna do.
Okay, so let's close this bitch out with our free agents or fantasy football talk. We're gonna do a little fantasy talk here, and it's about which players switch teams that we think will have increased value, and a couple guys we think will be worse because they made terrible decisions with their life.
Yep. So I'll start it off. I have Dion Lewis going from the Patriots to the Titans. And you might be saying, oh, the Titans, they're not as good as the Patriots, you fucking idiot. And I would say, well, at least he knows what his role is now because his highs were going to be a little bit higher in New England. But now I think he's going to be more consistent, and consistency is a very admirable trait out of a fantasy player, I think, because in New England, like sometimes you're going to get a James White game or like a Rex Burkhead game or a Mike Gillislee game. You don't know when Dion Lewis is going to carry the load because Bill Belichick's a maniac who plays with people's emotions.
Yeah, you could have Dion Lewis get 40 touches one game and then not see him for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they won't even invite him to the game.
No. Like he's on his couch watching as they beat the Bills by like 45 points. But the point is, like, I think that he's going to get a lot of obviously like Derrick Henry is going to get like the straight ahead carries.
Yeah, Henry will get his touches.
Yeah. He's going to be like the number one guy, but I think Dion Lewis is going to get like the tosses, the screens, the little flare passes, just the stuff that like gets him in space. And I think that's like something you can count on every week. Like he's going to be kind of the Christian McCaffrey type, I think, for Tennessee.
And I think the Titans are going to be a run-first team, I believe. And they have a really good offensive line. They have like a powerful, strong offensive line that I think Dion Lewis will have a lot of success behind. And he can plan on getting, 15 to 20 touches probably every game. Mm-hmm. And, probably good looks in the passing game as well. So, yeah, I agree. I think his value in Tennessee is probably more. He's also like one of those guys along with Malcolm Butler who also went to the Titans who was like, I'm so happy to be here. Right. No, and I think Dion Lewis is really good. Like he's a really good, smart running back with great vision. And I think, I agree with you. I also think, speaking of running backs, I think Jerick McKinnon going to San Francisco will see an increase in his value. Yep. They paid a lot of money to get him. And Kyle Shanahan, if he wanted him that bad, means he has plans to use him a lot. And the Falcons did a ton with Tevin Coleman when Kyle Shanahan was there. And I see Jerick McKinnon, like, he's basically their number one back now. So he's going to get a lot of touches, a lot of passes. I think his value goes way up going from Minnesota to San Francisco. And he had good value in Minnesota last year after Cook got hurt, but I think you can bank on him being better.
Yeah, I think it's generally like a wise fantasy move to take whoever Kyle Shanahan's running back is at any given time. Like, it's kind of the thing that you'd say about like his dad's system back in the day. Like, I think if you plugged like you or me into that system, we could bang out like 800 yards.
I could get 1,800.
Yeah. Well, you have cutback ability.
Yeah.
I'm more of the power back. I don't fit the system quite as well.
You'd be my Howard Griffith.
Yeah. Block 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
I'll take it. So I have another NFC guy who moves from Seattle to Green Bay, and that's Jimmy Graham, who I think just by virtue basically of playing with Aaron Rodgers will put up bigger numbers than he did in Seattle, because I don't know, like he had some moments in Seattle, but I think overall he was kind of a disappointment for what they traded for him back in 2015, because they gave up like a first rounder and Max Unger to get Jimmy Graham, and I don't think he ever quite lived up to expectations.
No, because he was insane in New Orleans. Like,
yeah,
it was. You were saying like you were debating whether Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski was a better tight end.
Yep,
like that's how effective he was in their passing game with Drew Brees, and he was pretty good in Seattle, but he was not like he was, in New Orleans. So I think the question there is he still that good? Was it just the system with Brees, or, with the lack of maybe other receiving targets in Green Bay? Like, you're going to have Devontae Adams. Jimmy Graham could be easily the second guy, especially in the red zone. And with a quarterback as good as Aaron Rodgers, you would assume it gets better. But Russell Wilson's a really good fucking quarterback too, who threw a lot of touchdown passes. But I don't think Seattle utilized the tight end position as effectively as they could.
Yeah, tight end's never been a huge position in Seattle. They're more of like a wide receiver-based passing offense.
And they had a terrible offensive line in Seattle, which affects
that's another big part of it. And that's like, it actually makes a big deal when you have a guy like Jimmy Graham whose best asset is getting vertical as a tight end. And if you don't have the time to let him get down the field, like, it doesn't matter how good he is. Aaron Rodgers, I think, will be excited to just play with a good tight end for the first time since like Jermichael Finley, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a good fit. Another guy I have, and it's a quarterback, I think will have pretty good fantasy numbers, better than last year's Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota. He's got new toys. He's got 2 really good receivers, Diggs, Thielen, could argue as maybe the best 2 in the NFL. Kyle Rudolph at tight end. And if Jerick McKinnon stayed in Minnesota, I'd be even more excited, because Kirk Cousins he utilized his running backs a lot in the passing game. He throws a lot of screen passes. I think that would have been a smart move to keep McKinnon there for him. But overall, like, Washington was a disaster last year. Cousins still did all right, but I think he'll be in the top 10 for quarterbacks easily for fantasy.
Yeah, Cousins statistically dropped off a little bit last year from where he was in 2015 and 2016.
He lost all his ball catchers.
Yeah, and Terrell Pryor never quite caught on in Cleveland, and Josh Doxson was sort of a disappointment as a first-round pick. So I think he's actually going to get a lot better now that he has those weapons. But have you ever been on the subreddit R Kirk Cousins before?
No, I don't think so.
It is the most bizarre player subreddit I've ever seen.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff about him, like, not cheating on his wife. It's very strange.
Yeah, we should look at that and talk about it next podcast.
Yeah. I'll just say this to the listeners: like, go ahead and like browse through Art Kirk Cousins, and then we'll have a little discussion next week. So
that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
I am excited for it. Like genuinely.
We're gonna have a little roundtable discussion. But yeah, I think he's gonna be better, and he definitely doesn't cheat on his wife. Torrey Smith in Carolina, I think he's gonna be better than he was in Philadelphia, which sounds a little counterintuitive just because Philadelphia had a great offense last year.
Right.
But he's more of a priority in Carolina than I think he was in Philadelphia.
Yeah, there were too many good players in Philly.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's like Torrey Smith was like the fifth option, basically. You go to Carolina.
He'll probably be the number 2 target there.
Yeah, like they have Devin Funchess. We don't know what we're going to get out of DJ Moore, who's the rookie wide receiver there that they took in the first round. And
a lot depends on Greg Olson's health. When he's healthy, he's fucking awesome, but he's getting older. Yeah, okay, I agree with that. Now for a guy I think's value is going to go down is Isaiah Crowell.
Interesting.
Running back from the Browns goes to the Jets. Oh, things aren't working out here in Cleveland. Better go to the Jets where their offensive line is even shittier.
Hard to argue. However, Stephen A. Smith, I had Isaiah Crowell in fantasy last year.
I think he's good. I think he just went to the wrong place.
I think he was in the wrong place to begin with. I think he went to a wrong place
than Cleveland.
I don't know. I don't know if that's possible.
How could I even say that, Will?
I don't think that's metaphysically not a possibility.
This year,
you can't go lower than 0, okay?
Cleveland has a better chance of having a good offense this season than the Jets do. Better offensive line, Baker Mayfield or Tyrod Taylor. I guess that's a wash with Josh McCown right now. Better receiving targets, though. All signs point to a running game being better in Cleveland for Crowell. So I say his production is going to go down, but maybe the Jets hand it off to him every single play. And
that's what I'm thinking. Like they're just going to give him the ball.
If he's better, it's going to be by quantity. That's all it will be.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get points for yards per carry in fantasy, so.
Nope,
just pure mass, just pure quantity.
Okay, so, yeah. Well, we touched on this. We can talk a little more, because there's probably some other guys we can discuss next week, fantasy, and God knows there's going to be very little to talk about. So maybe we'll talk about a few more guys next week. We'll get into Kirk Cousins' Reddit thing.
Yes.
See what happens. And hopefully this podcast saves, and this is the last time we record this today.
If you're listening to it, we were successful.
So thank you for listening. Again, we're on Podbean. You can download those. The link's in the description here on YouTube. iTunes, please, for the love of God, go give us 5 stars and a good review. Will is on Twitter at WillKeys6, and he's writing articles every week on that'sgoodsports.com. And that's it.